Hello and welcome to the Cradle Bytes, where you can get the latest from West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. Today I am joined by Fuad Itayim, news desk writer for the Cradle. And before we start, make sure to like, to share, to subscribe, and to check out our Patreon, where you can support the work that we do here at the Cradle. And we must start with Lebanon, where over the past week, the country has fallen victim to two Israeli terror attacks that saw thousands injured and dozens killed. And overnight, a very interesting statement came out from the Lebanese Foreign Ministry. Why don't you fill us in, Fuad?
Thank you, Esteban. So, yesterday the Lebanese Foreign Ministry last night issued a quite significant statement where the Foreign Minister came out and essentially backed Hezbollah's right to respond to these terror attacks. So this is really significant because normally the kind of talk we hear from the Lebanese state is one of de-escalation, one of toning down rhetoric, one of calling for calm,
It's always what the U.S. Embassy asks, right? The Lebanese state always echoes.
The Resolution 1701, pushing Hezbollah away from the border. This time it's essentially supporting Hezbollah's right to respond to this attack because this was an attack against the entirety of Lebanon. This was a violation of Lebanese sovereignty, and it's quite significant. It was a wide-scale attack. I mean, it happened in several locations of the country. It happened in Beirut's southern suburbs. It happened in the south of Lebanon. It happened
It was an attack on civilians, right? There's no way to get around it. This was a terror attack, 2 days of terror attacks against Lebanese civilians. You're basically making thousands of people into bombs.
Essentially.
We saw several children killed. We saw nurses killed. One of the bombs that went off yesterday went off during a funeral procession from the victims from the day before. So this is, huge from the Lebanese state to come out and essentially say we cannot ask Hezbollah.
And we know for a fact that while Hezbollah members carry these pager devices or these communication devices, they're not the only people in the country who do. And this was confirmed by officials, by a spokesman for Hezbollah who said this was an attack on civilians and Hezbollah members are not the only people who carry these communication devices.
Exactly. And something very interesting too as well that came out, right? The company, the manufacturer, because these attacks, the first one were pagers.
Yeah.
These thousands of pagers that beeped at around 3:30 p.m. on Tuesday and then exploded in people's hands, in people's faces, in people's pockets. Then the next day, they are two-way radio devices called walkie-talkies, right?
Yeah.
The pagers manufactured by a Hungarian company on behalf of a Taiwanese company, Apollo Gold. The walkie-talkies bear the brand of ICOM, a Japanese company. So immediately the two companies come out. First, Gold Apollo from Taiwan comes out and says, these devices were not made by us. They were made by this company, BAC Consulting, based in Budapest, in Hungary.
They did.
A shell company. We are finding out right now, this is a company set up by the Israeli intelligence agencies, most likely than not, the Mossad, to manufacture these devices years ago, right? They've been doing this. They are describing this as a long-term, complex operation to manufacture these devices and start shipping them to Lebanon. They start arriving to Lebanon in 2022.
That's
and
right.
It's not until later this year that Hezbollah calls, essentially, right? Hassan Nasrallah says, throw away your phones, throw away your smartphones. These are spy devices. This is how they know. He says this in February. And then a few months later, Hezbollah buys these pagers in bulk, apparently from BAC Consulting. They come laced with a heavy explosive known as PETN. That goes off when they get this call on Tuesday. So this is BAC Consulting, right? We'll get into it a bit more. The other company, ICOM, comes out this morning with a statement on his website saying, we haven't manufactured these radios or the batteries for the radios since 2014. 10 years they haven't manufactured. So essentially saying, these are probably counterfeit.
Exactly. Laced with explosives. Okay, so this company's headquarters is located in a residential neighborhood in Budapest, and journalists BAC, that's right. And journalists actually visited the building on Wednesday and reported seeing the names of multiple companies, including BAC Consulting, posted on pieces of paper on a window. So,
this is the only evidence that this company exists here.
The only evidence. Yeah, confirmed to the reporters that the building provides headquarters addresses to various companies.
So you had also the Hungarian government come out and say this company never manufactured these devices here in Hungary. They have never had an actual presence. And the CEO, the listed CEO of the company, is someone who seems almost like a made-up identity at this point. The website of the company disappeared on Wednesday morning.
It was blocked behind the username and a password. It claims that she has served on the board of directors of the Earthchild Institute, but the sustainability group doesn't even list her among its board members. So it's very strange.
It's a front. It's a front, right? And
basically.
today the New York Times comes out with this report essentially confirming that it's a front, that a number of Israeli intelligence officials and Western intelligence officials telling them that the Mossad set up a bunch of companies, not just the one, not just BAC. They set up at least 2 other shell companies to lure, I guess, Hezbollah. And well, we saw the outcome of this. The attacks are unprecedented. They're unprecedented, and by many, they're being described as the first shot in this long-awaited war between Lebanon and Israel.
Definitely, and the time that it came at is very significant as well, because it came amidst a surge of official Israeli threats against Lebanon, and basically they're saying time for diplomacy is running out, and it's time to, launch an operation in Lebanon. We saw yesterday that the Israeli Army's elite 98th Division was redeployed from Gaza to the northern front, coming one day after the terror attack, and it coincides with several officials threatening an operation in the country.
Yeah, you also saw Israeli journalists, right? The Israeli commentator Noam Amir essentially saying last night, either accept the outline of Amos Hochstein, U.S. Special Envoy to the region, to withdraw behind the Litani River.
To push Hezbollah away from the border.
Exactly. Face the wrath of Israel, I guess. Next time this opportunity may not be available. Open threat by an Israeli journalist. We have heard, as you're saying, right, like Israeli officials, they order the redeployment of troops to the Lebanese border, the 98th Airborne Division. We have seen videos of tanks moving to the border. What do you think, Fuad? What can we make of this? Do you think it's imminent? Do you think it's about to happen? Do you think it's about to blow up?
It's hard to say. It really seems so. The Israelis have no choice. They're in a situation where they have to return tens of thousands of people to their homes in the north, to these evacuated settlements that were evacuated in October when Hezbollah started its operations in support of Gaza. But they seem not to understand that this kind of operation is going to displace more. It's not going to allow these tens of thousands of people to return to their homes. So they seem dead set on some kind of escalation. It started with these pager and walkie-talkie explosion attacks, and it remains to be seen how it could develop from here. But we've heard some people saying that this could be the prelude to a ground operation in Lebanon. And we know if that happens, it's not going to be easy. We remember the last time Israeli forces, operated on the ground in Lebanon. It didn't go so well for them.
And now it's been like 22 years, if I'm not mistaken, right? Since Israeli troops were forced to withdraw from Lebanon. Hezbollah is a much more formidable fighting force at this point. Obviously, severe security breaches, right? What happened this week? On October 7, Israel suffered colossal security and intelligence failure that they haven't been able to recover since then. What happened this week for Hezbollah, maybe not as intense, maybe that would be the word, but definitely almost as bad of an intelligence failure, because what happened on Tuesday was bad enough. The fact that it happened on Wednesday too brings up even more questions, and also beyond the questions of Hezbollah's intelligence or security apparatus, the question of where's the line, right? Where is the line for Israel? Because as I said a few minutes ago, this is essentially turning civilians into bombs, right? Thousands and thousands, because not just Hezbollah fighters in possession of these pagers, not just Hezbollah fighters in possession of these radios, and even if they were, you're hitting at 3:30 p.m. in the middle of the week as children are leaving school, as people are driving their cars, are going, in the motorcycles. What if one of these pagers was on a plane? I haven't seen anyone speak about this, right?
And we have to remember, of course, not every Hezbollah member is a militant or a soldier. These are political officials, there are health workers, there are institutions. Not everybody is a soldier.
Exactly.
And I agree with you. Of course, this was a huge blow to the resistance. But at the same time, it remains to be seen how this has affected the entirety of the fighting force, or if it has. And we know that Hezbollah is preparing, especially with all these threats. And we know that Hezbollah is prepared to defend Lebanon from any escalation or aggression or operation.
Yeah. And well, we also need to remind our viewers that just a few hours after this conversation, after this bite, Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, is due to speak about.
That's right.
He was initially only supposed to speak about what happened on Tuesday. Now, obviously, he's going to speak about what happened over the past 2 days. I'm sure he's going to refer to this statement from Lebanese officials, right? On top of all of this, Israel is also waiting the Iranian response. The attack on Tuesday, the Iranian response for the killing of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. On Tuesday, Iranian ambassador to Lebanon was also among those hurt. The son of a Lebanese member of parliament was killed.
That's right. MP
This
Ali
is
Ammar.
unprecedented on so many levels. If Israel has the right to defend itself after October 7, doesn't Lebanon as well?
That's right. And we've had Lebanese officials also saying this in the last few days. I mean, we've heard the parliament speaker, Nabi Berri, say Lebanon has the right to defend itself against Israeli aggression. So this is something that needs to be insisted on repeatedly.
And we also need to remember, this was a terror attack. This was not a unprecedented intelligence operation, right? This was not a brave attack against the terrorists. No. This was a terror attack against the civilian population of Lebanon, a country that is mired in crisis, a country that cannot really, on many levels, afford to be dragged into a war. But sadly, we live next door to a nation that has no limits, that has no red lines, and who has the support of the entirety of the West, of the entirety of NATO. And now I just want to ask you one last question before we wrap up, Fuad, and is, what if this had happened to a Western nation? What if this had been Hezbollah doing it to Israeli army members, or if it had been, I don't know, Russia doing it in Ukraine? What would have been the response?
Wide scale, massive response, foreign military involvement, invasions. We saw what happened after September 11th. You know what I mean?
Exactly. The war on terror, right? But what is more of a terror attack than to target the civilian population in that
An explosion rocked the supermarket. I mean, this is the kind of thing ISIS would do.
Exactly. This is exactly the kind of thing ISIS would do. ISIS tactics brings up many questions, many of which we do not have the time to get into right now.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that comparison because, well, we are seeing the reactivation of ISIS, and we have heard many times that, ISIS seems to attack everyone in the region, but Israel.
Exactly.
Now Israel is following in their footsteps. We shall see what's going to happen. We will also stay on for Hassan Nasrallah's speech later tonight. Please make sure to follow the Cradle across all our channels for the latest updates. And again, please make sure to check out our Patreon where you can support the work that we do. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the head of news for the Cradle. I have been joined by Fuad Taim, news desk writer for the Cradle, and see you next time.